When I was young, I thought wealth was simply having more money, more comfort, more choices. But more is vague, and the vague never creates power. It wasn't until a mentor asked me to write down exact numbers, what I wanted to earn, what I wanted my net worth to be, and how much I wanted to give, that I realized wealth needed definition. That exercise transformed me. It gave me a scoreboard. Suddenly I could measure progress, not just wish for improvement. So let me ask you, what is your freedom income? Not someone else's number, but the monthly amount that would cover your life with ease and allow you to breathe freely. Then, what is your net worth target? The sum of assets that will keep producing long after you're gone. Finally, what is your giving goal? The contribution you want to make so your wealth benefits more than just your own household. These three numbers form the foundation of your vision. Write them on a single page. Keep it simple. Keep it visible. Post it where you see it every morning and every evening. That daily reminder will whisper to your subconscious, guiding your actions and decisions without you even noticing. Wealth doesn't arrive by accident. It is built brick by brick, but only if you know what you're building. Clarity creates direction, and direction creates destiny. Define your vision, and you've already taken the first step toward freedom. One of the great lessons of wealth is that income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what you keep and grow. I've seen people earn a fortune and end up broke, while others with modest paychecks quietly built empires. The difference is not in the amount, but in the philosophy of allocation. If you let lifestyle consume everything you make, you'll always be chasing, never catching. But if you assign every dollar a job, discipline begins to transform your financial life. The rule is simple. Live on 70% of your income. That's your lifestyle, your bills, your everyday choices. If 70 feels tight at first, it's because you've allowed lifestyle to swell beyond its borders. Shrink it back. Simplicity is a form of wealth in itself. Then take 10% and invest it. That portion is your future freedom. It's what works for you when you're not working. Another 10% goes into personal development, books, courses, mentors, seminars. The best investment is not the stock market or real estate. It's you. Your value to the marketplace determines your earning potential. And the only way to increase value is to increase knowledge, skill, and wisdom. The final 10% is for giving, not because the world demands it, but because generosity keeps you grounded. It breaks greed's grip and allows abundance to circulate. I remember when I first applied this. My income was not large, but I decided percentages mattered more than amounts. Even if the 10% for investing was small, it was a seed. Seeds don't complain about size. They simply grow if planted. That decision changed everything. What began as modest allocations compounded into assets, skills, and relationships that carried me further than I ever imagined. The key is automation. Don't leave this to good intentions, because good intentions fade by the second week. On payday, let technology serve discipline. Automatic transfers into your investment account, your education fund, and your giving account. What remains is yours to live on, free of guilt and confusion. Wealth is not built by accident. It is built by allocation. Practice this rule, and you'll turn income into capital and capital into freedom. Discipline is not something that arrives when you finally have a fortune in your hands. It begins in the smallest of moments with the smallest of amounts. If you can't set aside 10 cents from a single dollar, you won't magically develop the strength to set aside 10,000 from 100,000. Money only magnifies who we are. It doesn't change our nature. It simply exposes it. The habits you form with pennies will follow you with dollars. That's why wealth doesn't start with income. It starts with discipline. I remember when I was just getting started. I didn't have much to my name, But I learned that it wasn't the amount that mattered, it was the practice. I told myself, save 10%, no excuses. Some weeks it was painful. $10 saved from 100 felt like a mountain when the bills were waiting. But each time I held the line, something remarkable happened. I wasn't just saving money, I was building character. And character is what sustains wealth when it grows. Think of it this way. Every time you save from a small amount, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. You're training your mind to resist impulse and embrace discipline. You're telling yourself, I am in control of my money, not the other way around. That mindset is worth far more than the few dollars you've saved, because it sets the foundation for everything that comes later. Without that habit, even a windfall will slip through your fingers like water. The action is simple. Practice saving 10% of every single dollar. When you get a dollar, take a dime and move it. Don't debate, don't delay, build the muscle. That small discipline, repeated faithfully, is the bridge between scarcity and abundance. Because if you can manage the little, you'll be trusted with the much. And if you can master pennies, the dollars will never intimidate you. Most people dream of improvement without ever stopping to measure where they actually stand. It's like trying to set sail without knowing your port of departure. You can't chart a course to freedom if you don't know where you're starting. Wealth doesn't respond to hope. It responds to accuracy. You have to face your current reality with honesty, even if what you find makes you uncomfortable. If you don't know where the money is going, you'll never have enough of it, no matter how much you earn. I remember sitting down once and doing a full audit of my finances. At first, it was uncomfortable, painful even. I thought I was doing fine, but the moment I tracked every dollar for 30 days, I was shocked at the silent leaks. Small habits, little conveniences, casual spending that had no return. It wasn't the big purchases that were robbing me. It was the daily drips. And when you add up enough drips, you end up with a flood that washes away your future. That exercise changed my life because I realized you cannot fix what you refuse to see. So the action is clear. Track every single dollar for 1 month. Write down your income, your expenses, your debts, your assets. Nothing left in the shadows. Put it all on paper so it stares back at you. Then, when you see the leaks, don't excuse them, name them, and fix them. Cancel what doesn't serve you. Cut back where you're wasteful. And redirect that money toward your vision. The power is not just in the numbers, but in the awareness that comes with them. Once you measure, you take back control. Once you see reality clearly, you can change it. And when you finally master where every dollar goes, you'll discover that wealth was never far away. It was simply hiding behind your lack of attention. One of the greatest lessons in wealth building is that offense wins games, but defense wins championships. Most people are so eager to chase opportunity that they forget the importance of stability. And without stability, every setback becomes a crisis. Think about it. If the car breaks down, if you lose a client, if the company downsizes, what do most people do? They scramble, they borrow, they swipe the credit card, and suddenly, instead of solving a problem, they've created a bigger one. Debt becomes the quicksand that keeps pulling them under. That's why the first foundation of wealth is not an investment, but an emergency reserve. 3 to 6 months of living expenses, sitting in cash, ready when life shows up uninvited. Now, some people will argue, but cash doesn't grow. True, it doesn't. But this money isn't meant to grow. It's meant to protect. It's not an investment. It's insurance against desperation. Because when you have reserves, you don't have to sell assets at the wrong time, and you don't have to borrow money at the worst rate. You buy yourself time, and time is the most valuable currency in the world. I remember when I first saved my first $1,000 just for emergencies. It didn't seem like much, but the sense of confidence it gave me was worth more than the money itself. That reserve meant that life could throw me a curveball, and I wouldn't have to panic. It meant I could keep building instead of tearing down progress to patch a hole. And as that $1,000 grew into months of expenses, I realized I had bought myself freedom from fear. So here's the action. Make it your mission to save $1,000 as fast as possible. Sell something, cut back, pick up extra work, just get that first layer of defense in place. Then, steadily build until you have 3 to 6 months of expenses tucked away. Keep it liquid, keep it safe, and never touch it except for true emergencies. When you do this, you'll discover that opportunity no longer scares you. Because when you're prepared, you're free to act boldly without fear of the next storm. The greatest return on investment you'll ever make is not in the stock market, not in real estate, not in any asset you can purchase. The greatest return is in yourself. Wages will make you a living, but it's skills that will make you a fortune. And the truth is, money follows value. If you want to earn more, you must first become more. People are not paid for time, they're paid for the value they bring to the marketplace. $10 an hour or $10,000 a day, the difference is in the skills applied during that time. When I was starting out, I didn't have much capital. I couldn't invest in businesses or properties. What I could invest in was learning. I picked up books, attended seminars, sought out mentors, and most importantly, I practiced. Communication, leadership, sales. These were not just abstract ideas. They became tools that allowed me to multiply my income and open doors that would have stayed shut otherwise. The discipline of learning and applying a skill is what separates those who simply survive from those who thrive. Think of it like this. Stocks can go up and down, markets can crash, but once you own a skill, no one can take it from you. A skill compounds just like money. You practice, you refine, you apply, and every effort makes you sharper. If you can sell, you'll never go hungry. If you can lead, you'll never be without opportunity. If you can communicate clearly, doors will open in every direction. So here's the challenge. Don't wait to stumble into skill. Design it. Pick one high-value skill that has the power to increase your income. Communication, sales, leadership, technology, finance. For the next 90 days, dedicate an hour daily, 30 minutes to study, 30 minutes to practice. Apply what you learn immediately. By the end of those 90 days, you won't just know more, you'll be worth more. And when you become more, you inevitably attract more. More opportunity, more income, and more freedom. One of the biggest shifts in my own life came when I stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like an owner. Wages are fine. They put food on the table. They pay the rent. They keep the lights on. But wages alone will never set you free. What sets you free is profits. Profits are better than wages because wages will make you a living. But profits can make you a fortune. And here's the secret. You don't have to quit your job to start. In fact, you should use your job to fund your enterprise. Let your wages buy you the freedom to experiment, to build, to test, to create. When I was younger, I worked hard at my job, but I worked even harder on my future. Nights and weekends were not for wasting, they were for building. I started with small enterprises, simple things that didn't require massive capital but did require creativity, courage, and consistency. And I learned something very important. When you trade hours for dollars, your earning potential is limited. But when you trade creativity and initiative for profits, your potential is unlimited. It doesn't have to be grand at the beginning. You don't need $1 million business plan. What you need is a simple offer, something you can deliver on evenings or weekends, something that solves a problem, something someone is willing to pay for. The marketplace rewards value, not effort. So create something of value and exchange it. Your first client doesn't just give you money. They give you proof that you can step out of the wage cycle and into the profit cycle. So the challenge is this: define one simple offer you can bring to the marketplace this month. It might be a service, a product, a digital tool, or a piece of knowledge packaged for others. Don't wait until it's perfect. Launch it, get feedback, get paid, and improve. Turn your wages into profits, and you'll discover the seed of wealth and freedom begins not with more hours at your job, but with initiative after your job. One of the most liberating truths I ever discovered is that money can work harder than you can if you put it to work. Most people spend their whole lives trading hours for dollars, but the wealthy understand how to reverse that relationship. They learn how to make money work while they sleep. That's where compounding comes in. Compounding is the quiet miracle that turns small, steady contributions into extraordinary results, but only for those disciplined enough to begin and consistent enough to stay the course. When I was first introduced to this idea, it almost sounded too simple. Could it really be that taking a portion of what I earned, setting it aside, and letting it grow over time would create wealth? But I tested it, and the results spoke for themselves. What makes compounding so powerful isn't the size of the contribution, it's the habit of making the contribution. A small sum invested regularly can outpace a large sum invested irregularly. The discipline beats the drama every time. The challenge, however, is that our emotions often get in the way. We read the headlines, we hear the chatter, and we're tempted to jump in and out of markets. That's why automation is so essential. Don't leave your wealth to willpower. Build systems that make the decision for you. On payday, a set percentage should move automatically into your long-term investments. That way, your wealth grows whether or not you feel like it, whether or not the news looks good, whether or not you're tempted to spend it elsewhere. And here's the beauty. The earlier you start, the less you need to invest, because time does the heavy lifting. The longer you delay, the harder the climb. So, decide today to put money to work. Automate it, forget it, and let compounding quietly create the fortune that effort alone never could. The day you wake up and realize your money is earning while you rest, that's the day you'll know you've stepped onto the path of freedom. One of the greatest shifts a person can make is to begin thinking in terms of assets rather than expenses. Most people see money only as a tool for consumption, something to spend on pleasures, comforts, or conveniences. But if you look closely, you'll notice that every dollar you spend is either feeding you or bleeding you. It is either moving you toward freedom or further into dependency. The wealthy learn to see dollars as employees. The question is, do you let them work for you, or do you dismiss them into the marketplace to never return? I remember when I first adopted this philosophy, I began asking myself a simple question before every purchase. Will this thing continue to serve me tomorrow, next month, next year, or will it simply fade away after the excitement wears off? A new gadget, a fancy dinner, another subscription, they all felt good in the moment, but they bled resources that could have been working quietly in the background. So I began redirecting. Instead of a new shirt every month, I bought shares of a company that produced shirts. Instead of upgrading a car, I invested in an asset that paid for transportation. That shift, small, intentional, repeated, changed the trajectory of my finances. The principle is simple. Trade at least one nice-to-have for one must-build every month. Take a subscription you barely use and turn it into a stock purchase. Take the cost of one restaurant meal and put it toward a dividend-paying asset. Over time, those assets grow, and soon they begin covering the very expenses you once sacrificed. This isn't about denying yourself. It's about training yourself. It's about learning to delay a little gratification today for a great harvest tomorrow. When you think in assets, you stop living only for the weekend and you start living for freedom. Every choice becomes a seed, and those seeds, if planted wisely, can one day feed you for a lifetime. It's not what you make that ultimately counts. It's what you keep and what you protect. I've seen people earn extraordinary sums and yet finish the year with nothing to show for it, while others with modest incomes quietly built fortunes that lasted. The difference is structure, discipline, and foresight. You cannot build lasting wealth if every dollar you earn slips through cracks you refuse to seal. Taxes, protection, and proper structuring are not glamorous topics, but they are the difference between a fragile pile of money and a fortress of wealth. When I was younger, I learned a costly lesson. I assumed that making more money was enough. I poured my energy into growing income, but ignored the silent expense of taxes, ignored the vulnerability of being uninsured, and ignored the inefficiencies of operating without a proper structure. One year, after settling a tax bill much higher than expected, I realized I had been working just as much for the government as for myself. That day I decided to study the rules. Because if you don't play by the rules with intelligence, the rules will play you. Here's what I discovered. Most of the wealthy don't just make money, they design a system to keep it. They use tax-advantaged accounts, track every legitimate deduction, and set up structures that allow them to grow while limiting liability. They insure against the storms of life, health, disability, accidents, because it only takes one storm to wipe out years of progress. And they build walls of protection around their assets, not just for themselves, but for their families, so wealth can outlast them. The action is simple. Schedule time with a tax professional and implement at least one optimization this year. It could be as small as opening a retirement account, restructuring your business, or documenting deductions. One adjustment now could save thousands later. Wealth is not only about offense, it is about defense. Play the game wisely, and you'll not only make money, you'll keep it, grow it, and protect it for generations to come. Time is more valuable than money, because money lost can be regained, but time once spent is gone forever. If wealth is built from seeds, then time is the soil in which every seed must be planted. Too often we treat our hours as though they are endless, wasting them on distractions, low-value conversations, and activities that move us no closer to our goals. Yet, the wealthy treat time the way others treat capital. They guard it, they allocate it, and they invest it wisely. If you want to change your financial reality, the first shift is not in your bank account, but in your calendar. I once heard someone say, "Show me your schedule, and I'll show you your future." And it's true. When I began setting aside dedicated hours each day for learning, creating, and selling, everything in my life started to shift. Before then, I had been busy, but not productive. I would fill my days with activity, but end them with little progress to show. The turning point came when I started treating my hours like currency, budgeting them toward the highest return activities. That meant less television, fewer idle meetings, and more focused blocks of time where I built skills, created value, or reached out to prospects. Here's the discipline I recommend. Block 2 money hours into your calendar every single day. 1 hour for learning or improving your craft, and 1 hour for creating or selling something that drives revenue or builds an asset. Guard these hours fiercely. No phone calls, no scrolling, no interruptions. This small discipline compounds over time. Imagine 700 hours a year invested solely in creating wealth. What could that do for your life? Time mismanaged becomes regret. Time invested becomes freedom. Treat your hours as capital, and soon they'll pay you dividends greater than you ever imagined. Your income, your habits, and even your expectations of life will eventually mirror the people you spend the most time with. If you surround yourself with those who complain, blame, and settle, their energy will quietly infect your own. But if you make it a discipline to spend time with builders, investors, and those who expect more of themselves, you cannot help but rise to meet their standards. Standards are contagious, and the room you sit in shapes the life you live out. When I was young, I found myself in circles where the conversations were about gossip, small troubles, or quick pleasures. And for a while, I adopted the same rhythm, believing that was the limit of life. But then I stumbled into a room of serious thinkers, men and women who talked about business ideas, investments, books, and possibilities. The very air was different. My language began to change, my goals stretched, my habits upgraded. Not because someone forced me, but because the room demanded it. The truth is, you rise to the level of your associations. That's why one of the most valuable investments you can make isn't always in stocks or property, but in proximity, getting yourself into environments that force you to stretch. Attend a mastermind where people talk about millions while you're still thinking in thousands. Join a class where the average participant is more skilled or disciplined than you are. The discomfort at first will be real, but it's also the evidence that you're growing. If you make it a practice to intentionally upgrade your circle, you'll find your own standards shifting. You'll eat better, think sharper, spend wiser, and create bigger. Don't stay in easy crowds. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Surround yourself with builders, and soon enough, you'll be one of them. One of the greatest lessons in wealth and in life is learning to separate the pace of action from the pace of results. Too many people reverse the order. They are slow to begin, hesitant to act, waiting for the perfect time. Yet once they finally move, they demand instant outcomes. That is a recipe for disappointment. The wise approach is the opposite. Be impatient with action, start today, no delays, no excuses. But be patient with compounding. Let the results come in their natural season. You cannot harvest in spring. You must sow, water, protect, and wait for autumn. I remember when I first began saving and investing. The numbers were laughably small. So small, in fact, that I wondered if it even mattered. A few dollars tucked away. A small investment here or there. For months, even years, it felt like little progress. But compounding is silent in the beginning. The tree grows underground before it shows above. Then, one day, you look back, and the account has grown, the habits are permanent, and the momentum is undeniable. This is why I urge you to commit to a 12-month streak of your core money habits. Save, invest, learn, and track every week without fail. Not one skipped week, not one compromise. Because consistency in behavior compounds just like dollars in an account. You may not see much in month 2 or 3, but by month 12, the picture will be very different. And more importantly, by then, you will be different. So, act today with urgency. Don't wait to clear all your debts, or to land the perfect job, or to feel fully ready. Begin with what you have, where you are. And once you've begun, shift your mindset to patience. Wealth is not built in a weekend, but in a steady year stacked upon another. Hurry with your habits, but let time do the multiplying. Every fortune is born from a problem someone decided to solve. If you trace back the great businesses, the inventions, the services we rely on daily, they all began with frustration. Someone said, "This is inconvenient. This is broken. This could be better." And instead of complaining, they built a solution and then packaged it for others who shared the same pain. Wealth follows problem solvers because value follows solutions. If you want to elevate your income, stop asking, how can I make more money? And start asking, whose problem can I solve? And how can I do it better, faster, or easier than it's done today? In my early years, I noticed that most people carry dreams but no framework to chase them. That frustration in myself and in others became the seed for building programs and speeches that help millions find direction. The lesson is simple. What bothers you is often the blueprint of your business. Don't ignore your own struggles. They are hints about where you could create value for others. A practical way to begin is this. Write down 5 problems you've solved for yourself in the last year. Maybe you've figured out how to get out of debt faster, how to organize your time better, how to eat healthier on a budget, or how to navigate a difficult workplace. Those solutions may seem ordinary to you, but to someone else, they are worth paying for. Choose one and test it. Package it into a guide, a small service, a workshop, or a product. Start small, deliver it with excellence, and charge a fair price. Money is not meant to sit idle. It was designed to move, to circulate, to create value. The mistake many make is holding it too tightly, fearing loss instead of embracing flow. But wealth, like water, grows stale when it stagnates. When it moves with purpose into worthy causes, into service, into opportunities, it multiplies. Generosity is not just about charity. It's about creating circulation. When you give wisely and intentionally, you send a message to yourself and to the marketplace. I have enough. I live in abundance. I trust the flow. And that mindset attracts more than fear ever will.